All right, we'll get going here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pat Palingo from Yale Appliance. With me today is Steve Scheinkoff, our CEO. Today, we're going to talk about how to start your kitchen project with a focus on appliances. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We are going to send out a recording of this, so don't go crazy making notes. You'll get a recording by the end of the week here. We got a lot of great questions during registration. We're going to make time to go through all those. And please use the Q&A if any questions come up along the way, and we'll make sure to get to everybody. With that out of the way, let's turn it over to Steve.
All right. Well, thank you for attending. Thank you for spending your 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning with me. Thank you for the introduction, Pat. So this is going to be an unconventional view of how to start your kitchen. I figure being conventional, you can go to House or one of those sites. But you know, I did the content for the PowerPoint, but the guy that actually does the PowerPoint is Manny. I was going to learn PowerPoint, but he does such a good job. He's way better than I could ever be. And the last thing I said to him is, I go, you know, on slide 2, let's show a really kind of cool picture, please. No white and gray. Make it different. Let's give some aspirational kitchen. And so he gives me this. And you know, I walk in this morning, I wanted to practice at like 8:30. I look at it and I go, this is exactly what this is exactly how not to design a kitchen. Right? And at first glance, it looks great. First of all, green, I like it. It's different. You know, I like the way they did kind of a transitional brown and white. It's not white and gray like I asked. It's Gagano double wall oven, beautiful wall oven. Bang & Olufsen designed that. It's very unique. I like the cooktop. It has the knobs in the front. Now, the reason why I put knobs in front is because instead of on the top, you add more space in the cooktop, so it's very well conceived. But there are 2 problems with this, one major and one minor. The minor problem is going to be answered the question a lot of you have asked for design tips, and I have a few. So take a good look at this picture now, because at the end, we're going to redesign this kitchen the right way. And that's not exactly how I want to start. I mean, this is a picture I saw at 8:30, 8:45, kind of laughed. I want to start by saying tomorrow I'm actually going to go visit my dad. And I want to give you a visual of his house. He bought it about 15, 16 years ago. You walk into you go in the garage. See, I don't have a garage, so I appreciate that. And you're walking down a narrow hallway. And on the left is a galley kitchen, which is kind of unusual. And on the right, he has his formal dining room table with a crystal light fixture over it. And to the left of that is a sunken living room. I don't know if any of you are planning a sunken living room, but don't do it, because that little half step is an ankle turner. I actually convinced him to put a light on it so I could see it. It's not a real step, so you're not used to it. Yet he's like an 85-year-old guy with a sunken living room. And to the left of that is a spiral staircase. An 85-year-old guy's got a spiral staircase to a room I've never seen anyone in. So it's not a good utilization of space. But as funny as that is, that's kind of the way it was, right? 30 years ago, we didn't talk about kitchen design because you had a galley kitchen. Galley kitchen had a spot for the stove, had a spot for refrigerator, sink. That was the kitchen design. And then you had a place where you served the food, you know, your formal eating, dining, kitchen area. And as those spaces have merged, where your kitchen is now kind of the hub of your house, it's where the meeting place and everything happens. Now we start talking about secondary cooking and point of use refrigeration. We talk about flow and how you're going to use it. And what this webinar is going to do is going to make you look at the space and personalize it to the way you're going to use it. So let's get to it. Get one last look. Let's move on. So here's what you're really going to learn. The ABCs of kitchen design, that's literally, you're going to look at your space and ask some questions. We're going to look at 2 radically different case studies from 2 very similar people. We're going to talk about where you start and with what appliance, and hint, it's not an appliance. you've got your biggest appliance decision. You only have one, actually. And ventilation, I'm gonna cover a lot of ventilation because so many people do it wrong. And why Benihana is not exactly the best model to copy, or maybe it is. We're gonna get into refrigeration types, we're getting into appliance issues, there's gonna be key takeaways, some resources, and all this is taped. So let's get to it. My history at Yale, this is my 35th year here. 14 years of writing a blog on appliances. I've had all kinds of experience, good and bad, which makes me ideal to put this thing on. I remodeled my apartment in 2014, and then less than 3 years later, remodeled a burnt out brownstone across the street in 2017. For most of you who have been in Yale Dorchester, it's an ongoing construction project in here. It's always changing because it's a 19th century building. So there's a lot of work to be done here. I designed the Yale Framingham first expansion in 2015. And I was involved, but I did not design Yale Hanover. So let's get to it. The first slide I think is the most important. It's the ABCs of remodeling. You got to get the right architects, builders, contractors. ABC means everything, appliance stores, cabinet shops. Don't get pressured into doing a project. You need to spend time vetting out who's going to be in your home, right? I look at reviews, Google, Yelp, Better Business Bureau, limited for general contractors. What you want to do is you want to look at people's portfolios. So if you're planning a Georgian colonial, say, you want to make sure the guy's done a Georgian colonial, and then ask the person that did the Georgian colonial how it all flowed. Once again, I think 50% of your time should be here, because this is a quote that's I actually did. Given on modeling, good tradespeople solve problems, bad ones cause them. So even if you don't have an idea of your own style and will answer some of your style questions, good tradespeople are going to help you out with that. So spend all your time there. This is the most important slide. Now let's talk about you. Let's talk about your space. Everybody's space and how they use is going to be different. So what's important to you? How do you cook? Are you trying to highlight any objects? How are you going to use the space? Spend some time thinking about that. Here's some lifestyle questions. How much space do you have? Again, if we're talking about a galley or a modified galley, you don't have much space. So there's limited things we can do with that. Do you and your partner like to cook? There's a restaurateur that we're doing a kitchen for. She likes to walk. He likes to grill. They have 2 separate stoves on either side of the kitchen. What do you use frequently? Do you have an object you're trying to highlight? We're on the water, outside, gardens, statues, anything like that. Will your lifestyle be changing? We're going to get into that very soon. And don't copy someone else's. You can copy their tile, their millwork, their granite counters, but don't copy their flow until you know your own. So let's talk about case study 1, me. I did my first renovation 2014. It was a 5th floor walk-up. I love it. Every time I look at the slide, I got tears. I spent so much time picking that light fixture up. I had great views. I redid it. It was a nice style kitchen. You had a little area to the right that you don't see. We matched the colors. Everything was great. And I still love the place across the street. Great kitchen for a bachelor too. I mean, yeah, you got to walk up 5 flights, but you had the wine cooler, you had the Thermal Pro range, sink, Sub-Zero, microwave drawer on the end. And then we had a lifestyle change. All of a sudden, that 5th floor, which I loved so much, became a curse, because now, for those of you who are not Bostonians, and for those of you that are, can relate, parking in Boston is not easy. So you bring a baby into the equation with, say, some bundles, and you have to figure out where you're going to park, how you're going to bring the baby up, what order. Is it the bundles on the 1st floor landing, and then the baby, or the baby, and then the bundles? All the time the radar's up, is that space going to still be open? So the 5th floor walk-up becomes a curse. Now, let's go back. She's now 4. You can actually live in a place like that with a 4-year-old, because you can say to your spare rib eating 4-year-old, walk up the stairs and see mommy up at the top. But you can't do that with a baby, right? So at the same time as I was having a baby, actually, sorry. So when the brownstone opened up across the street, I made the decision of putting the kitchen in the basement instead of the first floor where everybody else puts it. Because for me, parking, putting the baby on the sofa, and then putting the bundles away was just so much more convenient. I was so scarred by the whole parking grocery thing that I put the kitchen on the basement, and that was just my kind of lifestyle. At the same time, as I was ushering my kid into the world, my sister was saying goodbye to hers. She's got two wonderful kids that went off to college. And one's now a nurse at MGH. So in her own words, she sold her place in Medfield, sold her a small cottage. In her own words, all she wanted was windows and a coffee maker. That's it. That's all she wanted. She wanted an unfettered view of the ocean and back. That's all she wanted. So much so that she put a TV in the hood. Yes, you can do that. I actually put a blog post on. So two very different lifestyles, right? Two very different people and what we actually valued and how we plan our kitchens accordingly and our lifestyles. So where do you start? Now, a lot of people are going to say cooking or refrigeration. I think it's sinks. The sink is the most used. It completes the kitchen triangle that we'll talk about. That's kind of an old school term. And you don't need to vent a sink. So you can put a sink anywhere. Just think of that as centralized your plan around the sink. I know it's a little unconventional. Just give me some time to talk about it, right? And if we talk about our two different lifestyles, mine versus my sister's, somehow we both put the sink exactly in the same spot. And I had no idea what she was doing. She had no idea what I was doing. Same spot. So let's talk about the basics of good kitchen design. And that is never moving more than 1 or 2 feet from where your most active spots are. And your most active spots are going to be your dishwasher, sink, cooktop. So you never want to go more than a step one way or another, okay? I always say place the sink, not the stove. And the last thing is I always say place the sink, not the stove in your island. A lot of you are planning islands. And let me tell you why. Now, back when I was selling appliances, I would always get this, right? I like to entertain my guests while I'm cooking. And for some reason, I don't know why. And I don't really go to Benihana's that much when I think about it. But I always thought of Benihana's, where entertaining and cooking are one and the same, right? I don't know where Manny found it, but you remember how they slice the onion and everything else? It's cool, it's different. But what you don't see when you go to a Benihana or any kind of entertainment, cooking entertainment is, look on the left-hand side, see the hood? That's what you really need to exhaust if you really love to cook. And a lot of people say, well, I'll just put downdraft in the middle. Downdrafts, we're gonna spend a lot of time on ventilation. If you're gonna cook in an island, you need to vent. And you can do that, but it can only be done efficiently with an overhead hood. So I think sinks bypass that whole venting issue. So here's your one real appliance decision. This is it. This is the biggest thing. So much so that if you already placed an order for your cabinets, you got a good relationship and a good rapport with them, and you want to drive them a little bit crazy, say, hey, look, I know I put a stove in the design, but I want to go with now a cooktop and a wall oven. Changes the design completely, right? Stove versus wall oven cooktop determines the whole layout of your kitchen. Stovetop cooking can be centralized. Wall oven, when you think about it, you can place it anywhere. I mean, you're not checking the food in the wall oven on a 40-minute recipe every 2 minutes. It's like when the buzzer goes off, you take it out, or maybe you light the inside of the oven to see how it's going, maybe once or twice, okay? Also, where you put this determines your ventilation as well. So here's the layout. Here's the layout questions. One centralized, and one, when you're talking about a wall oven, you don't have to bend. Like I don't have to bend anymore. The other thing is you can personalize your cooking a little bit better with your wall. What I mean to say is, look at your wall, and a lot of people do double wall ovens, which is great. I mean, everyone always plans. Our industry is based on Thanksgiving. Everyone thinks Thanksgiving turkey get double wall oven, but you don't have to do that. Like you can put a single oven. You know, up top there we have a steam oven. We could put a microwave drawer below. Only 2 pieces. You can't load 3. Or you can put a warming drawer beneath it. You can do a speed oven above it. You can't do that on a pro range. Pro ranges you can get steam ovens at 48 or 60 inch, but for 30 inch, typical 30 or 36 inch, if you're dealing with a smaller space, you're basically getting an oven and a cooktop in that type of design. So you can personalize a little bit better with the wall oven, and you don't bend, but you centralize everything for smaller spaces. I think maybe a stove is a little bit better. Right? So now you get secondary cooking. There's a double oven we just talked about. You can get ovens, microwaves, steam ovens, warming drawers. Where are you going to put the secondary stuff? Again, we're not talking about my dad's galley anymore. You can put anywhere. And really the rule of thumb for me is how to use it. Like the picture on the left is a thermal kitchen. Our chef likes to use a speed oven. So we put the speed oven over the single oven to centralize that. For me, on the right-hand side, I put the microwave far away because we don't use it that much. In fact, we haven't used it very much since she was a baby to sterilize her baby bottles. So really, how you integrate secondary products is a function of how you use them. If you don't use them that much, then you can put them far away. If you use them more, then consider centralizing them. All right. Ventilation. It's so easy to make a mistake with ventilation. I'm not a fan of downdrafts, and I'll tell you why in the next slide. Right? Here's how you vent. A lot of people get the first one right. 600 CFM. CFM is cubic feet per minute. So when I say 600 CFM, what I mean is that the hood can extract 600 cubes of air in 1 minute. Right? And a lot of people get that right. They figure, well, I'm going to put the kitchen in the middle. I'll put the oven in the middle. I'll give it a 600 CFM. Or they'll put it at the end. I'll do a 1200 CFM hood, and they'll get one of those crazy pull-out hoods that somehow have become fashionable again after 30 years. What you don't get right, or what a lot of people don't get right, is the minimum depth if you use an oven is 24 inches. Because what happens is the smoke will billow past anything less than that, right? Now, you may think that this can only be for like a pro range or something, but to be honest, like we saw a Whirlpool range, $700 to get 2 15,000 BTU burners. 20 years ago, that was a pro range. So especially if you're getting gas, less so in electric and induction especially because it's more efficient. But especially gas, 24 inches deep should be your minimum. Again, that's a function of how you cook too. Duct runs, shorter runs are the best. Go with gravity, going straight up, straight back are the best. A lot of people, when we talk about transitions, elbows. When you elbow a duct, you reduce the static flow. So you want to keep that 1, 0 is great, 1 at the most. Anything beyond that, rethink your duct. Duct sizes, larger ducts are best. You know, when I remember going on contractor jobs, people were using dryer duct. Dryer duct's only 4 inches. That will smoke up your house. Obviously, it's also a grease trap because you don't want to use any kind of flexible ducting. I don't think any people use that anymore. I just thought it was kind of humorous back then. Now, if you're a Mass resident, or even if you're a resident in I know we have a lot of people from New York and California on the call. Even if you're not, makeup air is the law in the state, and they do actually look for it. Meaning, a lot of these houses now are airtight, especially if you're going LEED certification or passive home, right? So what happens is, if you get anything over 400 CFM, you need to make up that air. Now, typically, it's very easy to plan if you're in the planning stage, just put it through your HVAC. But just think about it, right? In older homes, you know, before we had energy efficient windows and, you know, better materials to keep the air in, you know, in older homes, you know, the windows were drafty. they had cracks in the bricks, so you had plenty of air that was always coming back. But think about it now, with these airtight homes, if you don't make up the air, what happens to the interior air? It becomes unhealthy. So that's why I think whether you have a makeup air statute or not, you should really consider a makeup air a transition in your HVAC. There are aftermarket parts that are a little bit harder to install. Now, what's my problem with downdrafts? It's simple, right? A downdraft, you can get a 1200 CFM, that's not the issue. You have no capture area on a downdraft. You have a longer ducting one, and you have at least one transition. So really 2 of the 4 requirements to really properly duct, I'm talking about especially if you love to cook, can't be done with the downdraft. Now, we have a vent guide on our website, a venting buyer's guide. I really think you should download it and read that to get more detailed information. So I know it's kind of humorous to be, we're a little late on refrigerators. When you think of your kitchen, you think of your stove and your refrigerator. Refrigerators are really easy to design and place. Once you get the sink and the stove, everything kind of falls in line. And there are 4 types of refrigerators. There's the regular refrigerator that's full depth. Then you have the counter depth. Only really the door sticks out. So you don't see the sides, much nicer look. You get the professional, if you with the compressor on the top. It looks a little bit more commercial, like the Sub-Zero types. Integrated's become really popular because it's seamless to the cabinet. Better picture would be just show like just a bank of cabinets and say there's a refrigerator underneath it. You can do that with integrated. And then you talk about point of use refrigeration. It can be it's not just for bars anymore. We have a set of drawers for our daughter where we put fruits and juices and everything in there so that she's not in the fridge. It's all waist tight, very convenient. You can put them anywhere. You can be refrigerator, freezers, combinations. We have a display in Dorchester. It's just point of use refrigeration as well. If you like wine, you can do anything with wine. Under counter, that's the True Wine Cooler in Hanover, the Gaggenau Wine Cooler in Dorchester. You can do anything. So really, you have tons of choices in cooking refrigeration, right? So now your mind's spinning a little bit. So I put this slide in to make you feel a little better. Don't be overwhelmed, right? Appliances follow cabinet sizes, not the other way around. Like a contractor's not going to say to you and say, well, you bought a 26-inch dishwasher and it's a 24-inch hole. That doesn't exist. Stoves, the type of stove you're going to buy is 30, 36, 48, 60. It's made to fit in that space. Also, if you get a smaller space, there's 20, 24. Refrigerators fit standard openings, 18, 24, 28, 30, 33, 36, and the larger 42 and 48-inch sizes. So it's really hard to get that. It's quite honestly, it's impossible to get that wrong. All American and most European brands, La Cornue is the exception at 43-inch, but everyone follows those standard sizes. It's a matter of just layout. All the same, you're gonna make big decisions between that French door wall oven, maybe the Wolf with the gourmet setting, but it all fits the same cabinet. All right. So yesterday we did outside kitchens, and for that, spoke to a lot of grill people, and there's so much in outside grills. It's on yesterday's blog if you ever want to see it. And I'm like, how do you got this huge outside space, can be anything. How do you figure what you're going to do? And they said, well, chalk it off. I'm like, that's brilliant. And it works on the inside too. If you want to try a sink or stove in the middle or put it on the side or something like that, do it, chalk it off, and then make a burger or go to your sink and dishwasher and see if the flow is right for you and or your partner, or to see if you both cook, chalk up and see if it works. If you find that the steam oven, you use that more, put it on another side. I love that, and that's something the grill guys taught me yesterday. So chalk it off. Now let's talk about real appliance problems. Appliances break, no matter where you buy them. We did 37,000 service calls last year, and And what makes that even worse is the fact that we were on a limited basis in March due to COVID, April, well into May. So that figure is really a lot smaller than it should be. 9.7 are going to break within the first year. And then you're going to need maintenance and tune-ups too. And, you know, I know a lot of stores are going to say the manufacturer will take care of it. And I understand why they're saying it. But the reality is, we're far more service than where this is a typical day of where we are and what we do. There's always twice as much service than deliveries. The other part is installation. You're going to find a lot of contractors pushing back on installation because putting panels on these integrated refrigerators, it's not easy. It takes our guys an hour and a half to do, and that's all they do. So really, you want to make sure when you do the contract, who's doing the installation, and you really want to consider service. I know there's a lot of people from different areas. I'd almost say, like, I mean, there are a lot of brands I like, but in a lot of brands will do a lot of the same things. I'd almost like veer off to my number 2 choice if in my area that number 2 choice had better service. So really consider that part, the install and service part, once you've picked everything else out as to where you're going to end up buying. All right, so let's do some key takeaways. Understand your space and how you use it. Start with your sink. I know it sounds radical, but when you chalk it up, it really makes sense. Your toughest decision is cooking. Cooking is the only thing that will change the flow of your kitchen. Vent properly. You don't want to smoke your alarm or want your house smelling like the last thing you cooked. Where do you want your secondary choices in cooking or refrigeration? And lastly, you know, when it comes to buying things, and when you're talking about stores and or appliances, you know, buy where you'll have the best bet to get it fixed, because you will need it if you're buying a house full of appliances just in the first year. So let's redesign this. Knowing what you know now, how would you change this? And a lot of this is right when you look at it, right? They highlight, you know, they open the windows to highlight some kind of northwestern landscape. But really, there's 2 issues. One you should be able to figure out, and one that I'm going to tell you when Pat asks the questions. Well, all you have to do to make this right, in my opinion, is to move the sink in the island. Move the dishwasher next to the sink right in the island, and then you will never have to move more than a half step from everything. That's what I would do with that spot. The other part we'll talk about in a second. So with that, I will say thank you. And I will open it up for questions, any that you have. I'm going to leave it on this slide for the second problem.
Great, thank you, Steve. We'll get started on the Q&A now. If any questions come up, please use the Q&A, and we'll dive into those as well. First up, Steve, a couple of design questions. Other than installing a deep cabinet that's hard to access, is there some clever way to use the space over a refrigerator?
You know, I thought about this question. The obvious thing came to mind was like, first of all, if you're talking about over a refrigerator, if you're going with a standard French door countertop refrigerator, you're at 72 inches, which is 6 feet. So add a couple inches for the shelving, so you're at 6'2". So let's talk about the things you won't do. Like, you won't put your silverware tray on there. You won't go from your dishwasher up and put the silverware, because that's inconvenient. So the first thing I thought of, I was thinking, I get the answer for it. Wine. You know, nice little wine rack. You know, it's slanted because you won't dry out the corks, which is, you know, part of the problem with storing wine. You're supposed to store them inside so the corks don't get dried out. And then I'm thinking, no, because everyone's going to have a light next to your refrigerator. So what don't you do with wine? You can't shine a light on wine. It'll bleach the tannins, and your wine won't taste like it's supposed to. So then I was thinking, okay, this is space that you use very infrequently because it's very inconvenient, but it is space. So how about like those holiday kind of mats? Everyone has them, you know, the Thanksgiving brown ones. you know, maybe some china that you want to put that. But even then, I was thinking, no, you got to get a step ladder. You might break grandma's heirloom china. And then I was thinking, how about a lockbox or a safe up there? No one would ever think. And because it's inconvenient to steal a safe, I'm like 6'5" tall. I think, so really the answer to the question is anything that you have that you don't need right away is what you store up there. But I like the safe idea.
We have a question from the Q&A just now. What is your opinion of a microwave over the range and using that as the vent?
Well, I like it because it centralizes the cooking. And in a lot of kitchens, that's where it has to be. But if we go to our, if we go to really, I think it's a function of how you're going to use the stove. Again, this is going to be 300 CFM with a capture depth of 16. So the more you use it, and the more high output, well, you can't put a pro range. You're not supposed to put a pro range underneath it. The more you use it, especially if you have gas, the less efficient it becomes. So in one case, I understand it. It's almost a giveaway in kitchen packages, so I get it, but it's not the best way to vent at 19 inches deep. So you got a gas range underneath it, and you use your stove, I would think of other options. I know it's hard because it's cheap, it's a giveaway in packages, so you take it, but it's not the best way to vent.
Another ventilation question, Steve. What are your thoughts on an in-ceiling mounted vent, like the 43-inch, 63-inch from Zephyr and Braun?
I mean, they tell me it works. They'll show me studies that it works, right? But if it works, then why is every other vent recommended to go 30 to 36 inch off the cabinet? What happens is, it's funny. When I was a kid, I rented a place in Cambridge, and it was actually a Patriot. John Hanna's line mate, Brian Holloway, owned it, and it was really a nice kitchen, but he had like a drop-in stove, which was high-end at the time. And he put a Newtone 400 CFM ventilator on the top of it. It's kind of like a prehistoric version of what you're talking about. And there was just grease around that. But moreover, I don't see how it does work. Because every ventilation company will say 30 to 36 inches off the range top. At 30, 36, after that, the smoke may dissipate. So how does the ceiling below work? I know it's got like unlimited CFM, but I think it's a beautiful design. I just don't see how it does work. Even though I would love it to work, I just don't see how it could. Especially, ventilation is important or it's not important. If you don't cook, it's no big deal. If you have induction, you can almost downdraft induction because it doesn't emit heat and it's far more efficient than gas. But still, the more you cook, the more you need good ventilation. And you see all these pictures in the house which are really incorrect. Downdrafting. This is one of the most popular pictures on house is a downdraft behind a 48-inch stove with a grill. I mean, go outside and grill and take a look at the smoke and tell me if that would work. So I'm really particular about this 30-36 within specs, something with depth. And I don't believe, as beautiful as those are, I don't believe they're the most efficient things you can buy.
More ventilation questions coming in. This one's related to what we're speaking to now. What's a solution for venting over a stove top when you have a very high cathedral ceiling?
Well, I think that what you could do, let's take a look at the picture that we're now, and I'm going to answer design question number 2 when you get into design. Take a look what you have there, right? That's a taller ceiling. Chimneys. I'd run a hood with a chimney. You can run, you see the stainless steel, there's a glass piece. what I'm talking about, the metal behind it, I mean, the metal on top of it is called a chimney. You can cut a chimney for as long as you possibly can. I still think that's more efficient than down grafting, because at least you get the capture, it's going up the right way. I think that's far more efficient than down grafting still. That's what I would do, even with the cathedral ceiling. Now, what you might want to do, and I know this is kind of hard, is somewhere in that chimney horizontally vent it to the outside. And I realize that can't be possible if you're on an interior room. But cathedral ceilings are hard, but I still think a chimney works better than a downdraft.
Next up, Steve, what do you think of induction versus gas cooktops? Does that reduce the amount of ventilation needed?
First of all, I'm a big fan of induction, especially in a cooktop. Induction does everything better than anything else. Now, let me tell you why. Induction is relatively new. Relatively new was discovered in 1980, versus gas cooking really hasn't changed, except it's gotten bigger since the 1920s, 1930s. Fundamentally, all the gas burners done is become hotter. Induction is fundamentally different technology. It's magnetic. So it requires less venting because there's less heat coming off of it, right? And there's all sorts of other benefits. You get the lowest simmer, you get a higher output. It's child safe because you can't turn it on unless it senses metal in the magnets. There's no residual heat on the cooktop other than from, because here's how it works. Magnet to metal pan cooks the food, versus in electric, element heats up, glass heats the pan heats the food. So you bypass that, so it's easy to clean because the glass never gets that hot other than the residual heat from the pan to the glass. But still, fundamentally, right, what an induction can't do is grill. Like you can get a gas, thermal Wolf, generator, pick one, with a grill in the middle, which can grill, and an induction really can't do that. Induction can griddle. We had the Saba do a wok. An induction can wok very well, but it still can't grill. That said, there's less heat emission on an induction than there is, I think I already said that, than gas. So it's much more efficient. Induction's like 90% versus 50% for gas. But if you're still cooking, right, and you're still, it's still better to updraft and downdraft. I mean, downdrafting induction is acceptable depending on how much you cook, because remember, you can't capture a lot in a downdraft. I think downdrafts will last with it still.
We had a question submitted during the registration on the induction theme. What are the drawbacks of induction ranges and cooktops?
Well, other than grilling, I don't see a real drawback. One person, I'll give you, hypocrisy in action here. So when I redid the brownstone, I said, yeah, we're gonna go with induction cooktop. And my girlfriend says, no, we're gonna go with gas. I'm gonna go, induction's so much better. And I'm like, she goes, well, I can see the gas flame. That's what we're getting. Small battle lost. So I have a professional gas cooktop in my house. One of the knocks on induction is you really can't see it when it's on, other than Samsung's got the blue LED shaded when that turns on. That's one of the disadvantages. But I still think it's far better technology because it's so much more advanced. The problem with the induction ranges is that they take up the whole 50 amp circuit. Cooktops don't do that. So whenever you get a voltage spike or something like that, it can really burn out the controls on an induction. So you see more service on induction than you do gas. That's the other disadvantage to it. But everything else, other than the grill aspect, is far better.
Going back to earlier in the presentation, how would you use the chalk it out method when there may be limitations where you can install appliances based on the current location of the gas, the water, etc.
So are you talking, okay. So we're talking about, if you're talking about replace, okay, first of all, on outside, if you get it wrong, it's on the outside of your house, right? On the inside, it becomes more of a problem. So if the question is, if you're totally renovating, your contractor will be able to move with permits anything you want to. If you're just replacing, then you're not really remodeling. And I don't mean that in an insincere way, because I'm loath, although it seems to be just the opposite. I'm loath to spend money on things. But if you're talking about moving gas and water and it's hard to do, then really you need to almost either renovate or live with what you got. Because it's really hard to do it after the fact once everything's in place.
Next up, do all ovens need to be vented? Do they need to be on an outside wall?
No. The last one that needed to be was the old thermidors. The old thermidors had a 4-inch vent off the back. The new ones are all self-venting. They just blow the air back in the kitchen typically. But none of them need to be vented.
A couple, back to design. Do I need to hire a designer and a contractor? Or if I have a vision, can most contractors work from that?
Listen, there's no eternal truth to anything I've basically said, and everything's flexible based on what it is you do. There's only one universal truth. Contractor wants to get in and out of your house and get paid quickly. So what a good designer will do is will keep you organized and give you ideas. So think about, like, when I think about redesigning a brownstone, I mean, could I have really picked out 4 bathrooms full of stuff? Would I know what kind of bathtub to buy? You know, you're talking about vanities, the little Simmons valves, all that other stuff. So a designer will help you with that. If you're organized, you don't need it. The other thing is, a designer is good if you don't have a sense of style of the space or your sense of style. He or she will help you flesh that out. I mean, I've got a very, my style is casual contemporary. I mean, dark floors, muted colors, neutral furniture, pops of color. So I work well with a certain type of designer. So you want to find a designer that matches your style. But typically, if you're organized, you get a sense of style, you can do it. Your contractor will always push for designer, because a designer organizes you and makes sure you go to Yale, make sure you go to whatever, Monique's bath or the tile showcase. We'll show you and we'll have that person waiting for you, keep you organized, because all he or she wants to do is get in and out of your house fast. But yes, you can, if you got a sense of your own style and you're organized and you can get all those things together, then yeah, you don't need a designer. But they're kind of good to have. They'll save you time and aggravation.
It's a great question from the audience here. My kitchen measures 100 square feet. There's a slider to a porch and 2 full-size windows there. Little wall space. It's just me and my husband most of the time. What appliances can be the smallest?
What appliances can be the smallest? Okay. Well, you can do 20-inch ranges. You know what's kind of cool though? You know what's my favorite small appliance? And this is going to be odd because we haven't talked about this appliance at all. 18-inch dishwasher. The difference between an 18 that nobody buys and a 24, which is the spec, is really not all that much. When you look at the inside of an 18 and inside of 24 on display, you're like, doesn't look like I'm getting all that much more. And you really aren't. That's a good place to save some time. You can always put it on your countertop. I don't think that's very convenient, especially in small countertop spaces. But a 18-inch dishwasher, put that on your list. Refrigerators. there's a line, Beko, they make 24 and 28-inch refrigerators. LG does too, that are actually nice. Like, before, not to say anything, but when you look at a Whirlpool, GE, in the commodity brands, when you small to them and cheap looking. When I started, they had a walnut handle, and then their big new introduction went from walnut to black. I mean, that's not a huge design detail, but the Europeans have always taken design seriously. And the refrigerator is another really great place to look. There's a Beko 28-inch or 24-inch refrigerator that's really nice looking. They put really good features in it. I think Samsung does a nice one at 30 as well. They can convert to refrigerator, freezer in the top. Those are good. Stoves, I think that's the last consideration for small. And we have we call it a city schemes, where you can do Gaggenau 24-inch wall oven and Gaggenau 24-inch cooktop that look really good, but that's really expensive. Blue Star, if you're looking for a professional, they make a 24-inch that's really nice. But the stove would be the one I touched last. You can get a 20, 24, 30 is kind of where it is, but that's when you're starting. You go to 24, that's when you're losing some functionality that you won't on a dishwasher and you won't a refrigerator. That's what I do. Dishwasher first, definitely. And if you want to wash your dishes in your sink, you can get a galley sink or deep sink. You could wash them in there and just lose the dishwasher completely. A refrigerator, get a small European type because they still look good. And then stove is last, 20-inch, 24. You've got some really nice, options at 24, but you still lose kind of functionality if you like to cook. So that's the order that I would do.
We had another question submitted about on this topic. What are the best design tactics to maximize the most amount of space in my kitchen?
Okay, here's a good tip. Cabinets, not so much. Designers, yes. You want to get a good kitchen designer, because a good kitchen designer can make space out of nothing. They're like a MacGyver with smaller spaces. They find space. Like in the kitchen I have now was way smaller than the first one, but it's far more efficient. And I'll give you a reason why. And then I'll go into design, because that goes into the slide that's up there now. Right? Spice racks. We have 50 different spices that we use. Like I'm a big turmeric guy. I don't know. I read somewhere that it reduces inflammation. I like cayenne pepper, oregano. So we got 50 different bottles. Do you know how much space 50 little bottles takes up? A lot of space. So what the kitchen designer did was next to the, wait a minute, let me see if I can, 1 minute, let me go back. Next to the stove, they put a little vertical spice rack that you just pull out. So it doesn't take a lot of space. It's brilliant. 1 minute, let me get this up here. Here's another one. You want a good space saving design? Garage. We go to look at what's there now. You see that range on the right of it? It's you can't even see it. It's so thin. But it compacts all those spice bottles into one little space, right? Some of the other things she did that were great. See the back? Go from the arrow and go directly across. That's called a garage. Or simply put, the stuff that sits on the counter that you don't want to see anymore. It's a great little design, because that back corner really doesn't do anything. If people leave it open, close it and put your blender in there, put your juicer in there. That's a good idea. The other thing is what's interesting is as you use pots and pans take a lot of space. And the reason is because you put the top on the pot, right? Kind of goes. You put it in there, and somehow when you put the top on the pot, it doesn't fit into the space. You look where the juicer is, underneath there, right? That's our pots and pans thing. But what the kitchen designer said is the reason why it doesn't fit is because the tops make it, when you put it together, it makes it higher than it should. So underneath the actual cooktop, she put a place just for the top. So now we can fit the pots over there, and you put the tops down there, and you really don't need the top with the pot unless you're cooking, because the top goes on the pot. You don't need it then. I think that was a brilliant use of display, a brilliant use of space too. The garage, spice racks, for some reason I was like okaying all these accessories, and I never understood why until, everything was like kind of formatted for how we actually use the item. So she did a really nice job. Now, one of the last design thing that I wanted to point out to you, and it's kind of a trick question, and it's something that kind of bothers me. And it'll bother you once you see it, right? Let's go back to Manny's picture here, poor guy. By the way, thank you, Manny. The PowerPoint was great because you did it, obviously. But take a look. There's something that will offend you as soon as you look at it, because they spent big money here. Look at the outlets. Look at those white outlets on the green back. Does anyone else have a problem with that? I do, because there's a better way of doing it. And here's a line. We sell lighting, and that's why, we could talk about lighting design here forever. I know a lot of you planning your lighting. Yeah, pendants work. Really, if the question is how many, it's usually 3 or 4. And those lights don't light your kitchen anyway. But anyway, I don't want to get started. There's a line called the Grand. It's under counter systems, right? Where you put the outlet in the actual system, so you don't see it, right? And then, which is easy to do under cabinet, I get that. But instead of putting a white outlet, they've got all these designer finishes with pop-out outlets you don't see until you pop it out, and then you get 2 on either side. So the other thing, besides putting the sink in the middle, which I hope everybody does, is think about the outlets. You're putting this, especially in a nice kitchen, you're putting outlets, and outlets really haven't changed since like 1960. Putting a Leviton or a Lutron outlet, even the Maestro dimmer, which everyone thinks is great. Think of like a Legrand switch, which you can pop in so you don't know it's a switch in areas, and you can put them on top as well, where they pop up and you get an outlet there. But the ones on the back where the cooktop is, put them under your cabinets. You won't see them. And you can always hook your blender up underneath. And I don't even sell the line. I feel like I'm selling for them, but you have iPhone chargers. Like if you like to cook, they've got like an iPad charger you can put right next to it. Really, really cool, interesting, better way of doing something. And whatever you do, no outlets in your kitchen, no exposed outlets anymore.
Just a couple more here. Steve, you talked about service frequency for induction versus gas.
Yep.
What about induction versus electric?
Well, first of all, right, let's take a look at the 2 most common repairs that we have at Yale. I take reliability seriously, because we can't sell unreliable products because we got to fix them at a loss. So why would you do that, right? Number 1 is obviously the ice maker and refrigerator, because you're sending, when you think about it, a freezing cold ice cube through a slightly warm refrigerator. That doesn't always work out well. But number 2 is the igniter on a gas stove, right? Igniters are exposed. You think about it like you boil over, you hit it or whatever. It becomes something that we just replaced. Now think about the things that we never replace. Like, you don't see an electric stove, because the elements, electric stoves are some of the most, and we write reliability blogs all the time. We give you the stats and which brands are better and all that stuff. But electric ranges are good because the element turns on, it's protected by glass, you can't hit it, your kid can't hit it, your toddler can't do anything because it's underneath. Induction's the same way. Induction's very reliable too, as a cooktop. As a range, uses all those amps. So, during a voltage spike or something, it becomes susceptible to repair. But as far as anything that's covered by glass, typically it's going to be reliable. And electric and induction cooktops are both reliable. And we have the numbers on them. You can always go to our blog site and check out reliability. Just type in reliability and all the posts should shoot out at you.
Last one, Steve. I've heard appliances are back ordered. When should I plan on buying my appliances?
Yeah, yes, they are back ordered. It's funny. I went to River School in Weston for 8th and 9th grade. One of my friends, a guy named Ryle Mahoney, and he's now the head of Kissler Knapp. They're a really, really good outfit. They make the McMansions. They're just a really good outfit. So he emailed me and he goes, I just placed this order for all these appliances, and they're telling me like April. It's like 5 months away. Can you help? I'm like, yeah, I can help. But soundly what I'm thinking is 5 months for some of these appliances is not such a bad thing. Here's the deal, right? Here's the way it used to work. You ordered your appliances, and then a month before you got your appliances, and then you shop for cabinets. The cabinet people put the appliances in their plan, and then you sat and you waited to order your appliances, usually 4 to 6 weeks beforehand, and they would be okay. I mean, we always try to remodel Yale after how I shop. I see it, I like it, I want to buy it, and I want it delivered quickly, kind of like the way it works on the internet. Unfortunately, however, with exploding demand and supply chain problems, the way appliances are made now is very different than the way they were made when I first started. But your Maytag washer was all made in Newton, Iowa. Now your Maytag washer made with parts from China, Mexico, and everything else. So as COVID has affected the supply chain, it's been a real problem assembling appliances. There's a dishwasher salesman said, if I get 80 out of the 84 parts needed for dishwasher, I can't ship the dishwasher. So what I would do, especially a lot of you shouldn't be affected by this, is instead of the paradigm of ordering 4 to 6 weeks before, when you order your cabinets, order your appliances. Cabinets typically come in, 3 to 4 months in a remodeling job. I think you should be okay there. But you should really check, because I know Sub-Zero is quoting extended lead times and a few others are. I think sooner is always better. So buy your appliances with cabinets and really stay on top, because this is not going away until 2022. I think earliest last quarter this year, probably next year, next first quarter, middle of next year. So sooner is always going to be better. Don't wait. If you know what you want to buy it, just buy it and just be done with it, rather than playing the game of, am I going to get it or not?
Great. Thank you, Steve. That's it for today. Lots of great questions. Thank you for attending. We'll send out the recording tomorrow. And please let us know if there's anything else. And that's all.